Hello everyone and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah shir. We're holding Mishnah Berurah Chelik Beis and we'll be learning today Mitzvah Hashem Daf Tes Zayin Amud Beis. We're starting with a new Siman, new topic, Siman Kuf Lamed Hey, Seder Krias HaTorah. We're going to begin now learning the halachos of Krias HaTorah, and we begin with Seder Krias HaTorah B'Yom Sheni V'Chamishi, the Seder of the Krias HaTorah that takes place on Mondays and Thursdays. Uba Yudalat Seifim, and here we have 14 Seifim. Now, before we turn to the Mechaber, we're going to look at the Hakdama of the Mishnah Berurah. Mishnah Berurah has a very nice Hakdama here, taken from the Rambam. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Kasav Rambam Perek Yud Beis min Hilchos Tefillah Halacha Aleph. The Rambam writes in Perek Yud Beis of Hilchos Tefillah Halacha Aleph, Moshe Rabbeinu Tikein Lehem LiYisrael. Moshe Rabbeinu was Mesakin for Klal Yisrael, Sheyu Kairin B'Torah Barabim B'Shabbos, that we should read from the Torah Barabim and tzibbur on Shabbos, Ub'Sheni Ub'Chamishi, as well as on Monday and Thursday B'Shachris in the morning, Kidei Shelo Yishu Shlosh Yamim B'Lo Shmias Torah, so that Klal Yisrael should never have to go 3 days without listening to Krias HaTorah from a Sefer Torah. Now, this is very fascinating. First of all, this means that this is, one of the earliest takanas chachamim. This is a takana of Moshe Rabbeinu's. Now, why did Moshe Rabbeinu make this takana? So the Rambam tells us, so that Klal Yisrael should not go 3 days without learning Torah. What's the precedent for this? What sparked Moshe Rabbeinu to make a takana against Klal Yisrael going 3 days without Torah? So the truth is, if you take a look at Parshas Beshalach, right after Krias Yamsov, Klal Yisrael comes out of the Yam, and they start to traveling, and they come to Mara, and if you look at the lashon of the pasuk over there, it says, Vayelchu shloishes yamim b'midbar. They traveled for 3 days in the midbar, in the wilderness. V'lo matzu mayim, and they didn't find any water. And then right away they started complaining to Moshe Rabbeinu, and then it says that the Rebbeinu Shalom showed Moshe Rabbeinu a certain eitz, and he threw it into the water. You know what? It's kedai to read the pasuk besides that pasuk that I just read to you. That pasuk I wrote down on the side of my Mishnah Berurah, but it's kedai to see the other pasukim as well. It says. Right after the Yam, it says, Vayasa Moshe es Yisrael miyamsuf. Moshe had Klal Yisrael travel away from the Yamsuf. Vayetzu el midbar Shur, and they went to the midbar of Shur. Vayelchu shloishes yamim midbar, and they traveled for 3 days in the midbar v'lo matzu mayim, and they did not find water. Vayavayu marasa, they came to Mara. V'lo yachlu lishtais mayim mimara, they were unable to drink the water from Mara. Ki marim heim, they were bitter. Al kain karishma Mara, therefore it was called Mara. Vayiloinu ha'amal Moshe lemar, the nation complained to Moshe Rabbeinu, saying, Ma nishta, what should we drink? Vayitzak el Hashem, they cried out to Hashem. Vayoreihu Hashem eitz. The Rebbeinu Shalom showed Moshe Rabbeinu an eitz, a piece of wood, a tree. Vayashlech al hamayim, and he threw it into the water. Vayimteku hamayim, and the water became sweetened. Then the pasuk says, Sham, over there in Mara, Sam Loi, he placed for him Chayk u'mishpat, Chukim and Mishpatim, Visham Nisahu. And over there they were tested. Rashi says, Sham Sam Loi, Chayk u'mishpat, says Rashi, B'mara Nasan lehem miktsas parshiyos shel Torah sheyisasku behem. In Mara, Klal Yisrael was given a few parshias of the Torah. This is before Har Sinai. But already in Mara, the Rebbeinu Shalom gave Klal Yisrael a few parshias of the Torah so that they should be able to be nisasik b'Torah. They should be able to sit and learn Torah. Shabbos, Para Aduma, Dinin, some halachos of Dinim, Choshed Mishpat. So, you see over here from this parsha that what happened? They went 3 days without mayim. We know Torah nimshal alabayim. Torah is called water. We can't live without water. We can't live without Torah. What happened by Mara? Klal Yisrael went for 3 days without Torah. 3 days without Torah, it was already Vayiloinu ha'am al Moshe. Already the nation started to complain. It already became problematic. What was the answer? The answer was Sham Sam Loi Chayk Umishpat. Over there already at Mara, the Rabbeinu Shalom had to give Klal Yisrael a few parshios of the Torah to be able to sit and learn Torah. That's what Moshe Rabbeinu saw. Moshe Rabbeinu saw for Klal Yisrael to go 3 days without Torah is a huge problem. Memela, he was besaken that we never go 3 days without coming to shul and hearing Krias HaTorah. Now, a kasha that you might want to ask, and the Prima Gadim asks this kasha, is, wait a minute, we say Kriya Shema twice a day, and the Rambam brings down in Hilchos Talmud Torah that we could be mekayim the mitzvah of limud Torah in the most minimal fashion. We could be mekayim the mitzvah of limud Torah by saying Kriya Shema twice a day. So if so, how is Klal Yisrael going without 3 days without Torah? The Prima Gadim says the answer is, and it lies in the words that the Mishnah Berurah quotes here from the Rambam, Kidei shelo yishu shloisha yamim b'lo shmias Torah. The difference between the minimal fulfillment of the mitzvah of limud Torah that you get by saying Kriya Shema, or hearing Torah read from a Sefer Torah. And that reminds me of what we learned in the previous Siman, where we learned about Hagbah. And we learned that to look in the Sefer Torah, to look at the letters of the Sefer Torah, the Magen Avraham told us, it could bring an Or Gadol into a person. So there's a major inyan for Klal Yisrael to hear Torah read from a Sefer Torah. And we shouldn't go 3 days without that. Beautiful thing to learn coming up to Shabbos, to Kabbalas HaTorah. Okay, so far we have here in the Mishnah Berurah's Hakdama, he brings down for the Rambam, why do we lay on Shabbos on Monday and Thursday? This is a takana of Moshe Rabbeinu's. Okay, continues the Mishnah Berurah. The Ezra tikein, later on Ezra was misakin, sheyu karin gam ben mincha shel Shabbos, that we should also have Krias HaTorah by mincha Shabbos afternoon, mishum yoshvei kronos. Because of the yoshvei kronos, those who literally sit on the street corners and waste their time. They have nothing to do and they're just mevatel. Why is it that we have this Krias HaTorah on Shabbos afternoon, mishum yoshvei kronos? So one of the things that's brought down, well, let's go a little further first. The Gamahu Tikun, Ezra was also masakin, shiu kairin b'sheni u'b'chamishi shloisha b'nei adam, that on Monday and Thursday, Ezra was besakin that the format of Krias HaTorah on Monday and Thursday should be shloisha b'nei adam. There should be 3 aliyos, v'lo yikru pachas me'asar psukim, and that the kriah should not be less than 10 psukim. Ki bizman Moshe Rabbeinu olav shalom, because in the time of Moshe Rabbeinu, when Moshe Rabbeinu was besakin Krias HaTorah on Monday and Thursday, lo hoisa takana dafka shiu kairin shloisha, it wasn't that you have to have 3 aliyos, v'sheyikru asar psukim dafka, and it wasn't that necessarily you have to have 10 psukim. The Aruch HaShulchan says that Moshe Rabbeinu's takana was just that you should read from a Sefer Torah Barabim on Monday and Thursday. How much you should read, that's up to you. It could be 1 aliyah, 1 pasuk. Ezra was masakin a minimum of 3 aliyahs and a minimum of 10 psukim. V'asahu v'tikein davar zeh. Ubi Yerushalmi Isa, Yerushalmi it's brought down, Moshe tikein lahem Yisrael. Moshe was masakin the Klal Yisrael, shiu kairin b'Torah b'Shabbosos v'Yom Tov, that we should have laning on Shabbos, on Yom Tov, u'b'Rosh Chodesh. I'm recording this on Rosh Chodesh Sivan, u'b'Chol Shal Moed, and on Chol Hamoed. Umaviyah Rif Perak HaKarei Oimid. The Rif brings this down as well in Masechtas Megillah. V'cheinu b'Rambam Perak Yud Gimel Halacha Ches. And so we find as well in the Rambam in Perak Yud Gimel Halacha Ches. It's brought down that the laning on Shabbos afternoon, he says over here, the Rambam, it's because of the yoshvei kronos. What does that mean, the yoshvei kronos? It seems to mean that those people who are yoshvei kronos all week, those people are not, they're amaratzim, they don't know how to learn, they don't spend time in shul, they don't spend time in the Beis HaMedrash. So during the week, they go to work. during the week. It's on Amaritz. So what's he doing? He goes to work. If he doesn't go to work, so maybe he's busy with his hobbies. Maybe he's gardening in the backyard. Maybe he's tinkering with his car, cleaning his garage, or playing a musical instrument, or whatever it is that he likes to do. But on Shabbos afternoon, what are the Yoshvei Kranos going to do? On Shabbos afternoon, there's no work. A lot of the hobbies, you can't be Isaacin, you can't be doing work in your garage. So what are they going to do Shabbos afternoon? So Shabbos afternoon, they're literally just going to sit around and be mavatal and speak Lashon Hara, etc., etc. So to counter that, Moshe Rabbeinu was besaked that there should be a Krias HaTorah by Mincha Shabbos afternoon. Okay, now let's go to Mishnah Berurah. Let's go to the Mechaber Sif Aleph. Says the Mechaber, B'Sheni u'B'Chamishi on Monday and on Thursday u'B'Shabbos b'Mincha and by Mincha Shabbos afternoon Kairin Shloisha. We call up 3 aliyos. Ein Peichesin Mehem. We don't make less than 3 aliyos. Ve'ein Meisifin Aleihem. Nor do we add on. No Haisafas. Monday, Thursday, Shabbos afternoon, no Haisafas. There's 3 aliyos, not less, not more. Ve'ein Maftirin Banavi, and we don't have a Haftarah. Not Monday, not Thursday, not Shabbos afternoon. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Eis Katan Aleph. B'Sheni u'B'Chabishi, we have a Krias HaTorah on Monday and on Thursday. B'Shachris in the morning. V'Avde b'Di'eved kol hayom zmana. Really, b'Di'eved, you could be yoytze that Krias HaTorah all day. Mikamakim lechatchila mitzvah lahaktim lechatchila. You're supposed to bring it up and do it by Shachris. So the laning on Monday and Thursday, this is not like kriah shma, which is a zman kriah shma, or like tefillah, which is a zman tefillah. Moshe Rabbeinu's takana and Ezra's subsequent takana that gave the exact format to the laning on Monday and Thursday, you could be Yotze Krias HaTorah all day. So let's say you're traveling somewhere with a minyan, and you stopped somewhere on a Monday morning, you're on the road, and you stopped for Shachris, and you don't have a Sefer Torah, and you can't wait, because there's Zman Tefillah, there's Zman Kriah Shema, Zman Tefillah, so you got together a minyan, and you davened, but you didn't have Krias HaTorah. And now later, at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, assuming it's during the summer, it's before Shkia, you arrive at a destination where there's a shul. Really, you could take out a Sefer Torah, and you could lane, and you could be Yotze Krias HaTorah. And from the Achrayim and everything, it sounds like there's nothing wrong with doing this ba'akroy. You do this ba'akroy every now and then. There's nothing wrong with that. Because, again, b'di'evid, you could be Yotze this kriah all day. Eis Katan Beis, ve'ein Meisifin Aleihem. We do not add on to these aliyos. You can't make no isafas. You can't make 4 aliyos on a Monday, Thursday, or a Shabbos afternoon. Says the Mishnah Berurah, why? Mishum bittul malacha la'am. People, sometimes people think that wasting the time of the tzibbur, don't complain that davening is taking too long. No, it's a real thing. We don't want to turn the tefillah into something that is onerous. I was once told by a Paisik, it's brought down that in times gone by, they said the Shir HaYichud every day. The Shir HaYichud, Adam Zmiris is the Shir HaYichud of Shabbos. But Yom Kippur night, many people sing the Shir HaYichud. There's a shira for every single day. So once upon a time, they said the Shir HaYichud every day. What happened? How come it's not the minig anymore? One reason it's not the minig anymore is because it's brought down that davening became too onerous. It was too long. So people, instead of staying for davening and leaving before Shir HaYichud, they didn't want to be the bum, the oisvarf that was leaving before Shir HaYichud, so they didn't come to davening at all. And Rabbi said that's what happens if you make davening onerous. If you make davening onerous, then there are people who aren't going to come to davening. It's too much. Davening is not supposed to be a lachatz. It's not supposed to be painful. It's not supposed to be onerous. It's supposed to be enjoyable. It's supposed to be beautiful. It's supposed to be nice. It's supposed to be enjoyable. You're supposed to put up beautiful balei tefillah to the best of your ability. The gaboim should be putting up beautiful balei tefillah. And the time of davening should be an amount of time that makes sense. It shouldn't be hours and hours. The rabbanim shouldn't be speaking for half an hour during davening. The gaboim shouldn't be making mishaberach after mishaberach after mishaberach after mishaberach. The balei tefillah should not be schlepping. The davening is supposed to be a davening that is pleasant and something that a person enjoys. It shouldn't be turned into something that's onerous. It shouldn't. Don't get me wrong. It shouldn't be an express train. I'm not saying that Psukkah de Zimra Shabbos morning should be knocked off in 15 minutes. No. The Zmani at Tefillah, it should be an amount of time that you could daven via mensch. But then it shouldn't schlep sich. They shouldn't do things to davening to make it schlep, so that somebody who's working all week, finally he goes to shul on Shabbos, by the time he gets out of shul, he's walking out grumbling, I can't believe how late they schlepped this. Okay, so now I could get off my soapbox, but you see over here, beferish, mishum bittul malacha. You don't make isafas because people have to go to work, so you don't make isafas. The gam ein maftirin mitam zeh, and that's also why there's no haftarah, because we don't want to schlep. Okay, now let's go weiter here. Let's go weiter here in the Ramah. Second line down in the Shulchan Aruch. Hagah says the Ramah. Let's say you have two chasanim, two Yisraelim that are chasanim. Now a chasan b'yom chupasai is a chiyuv. So you have two chasanim, they're both Yisraelim, and they're both chiyuvim to get aliyas. What do you do now? Says the Ramah, mutter lahaisef likrois arba'a. Then the Ramah says, may ikar adin, you could make a hisafa to create a fourth aliyah to be able to give the second Yisrael who's a chasan an aliyah. What's the rationale for this? Says the Ramah, dilididhu hevik yomtiv, because for the chasan it's actually a yomtiv today. Shemoter lahaisef, and on yomtiv you're allowed to make hisafas. This is what he brings down from the Mordechai and the Agos Maimoni. And he goes weiter, the Ramah, v'nired tu adin l'shtei bali bris. He says it would seem that the same halacha should apply to two bali bris. Now, two bali bris is very common, because let's remember what we learned already many times. Who are the bali bris? The bali bris are the avia ben, the father of the baby, the moil, who actually performs the bris milah, and the sandik, who's going to be holding the baby. So by every bris, you typically have at least three bali bris. And very often, two of them are going to be Yisraelim. So if it's on a Monday and Thursday, according to the Ramah, you can make a hisafa to give two of the bali bris aliyas. Now, let's see what the Mishnah Berurah is going to say. But again, says the Ramah, v'nira dehu adin l'shtei bali bris, because again, the yomtiv shalahemhu, because for them it's actually a yomtiv. K'il l'kamon siman tavkuf don tes. V'din Shabbos v'yomtiv, I'll come on, reish siman reish pei beis l'inyan hisafa. As far as making hisafas on Shabbos, on Yom Tov, we'll hold off of that to Siman Reish Pei Beis. Now let's take a look here in the Mishnah Berurah. Says the Mishnah Berurah Ois Gimel, Mutter Lahaisif. The Ramah said you're allowed to make hisafas on Monday, Thursday, for multiple balei bris, for multiple chasanim. Kidei sheyuchlu shneim lalis l'Torah. However, says the Chavetz Chaim, uledina kasvu ha'achronim de'ein noyagin kain. Halacha l'maisa, the achronim say we are not noyag like this. And certainly when it comes to bali bris, certainly we're not noig like that. The Aruch HaShulchan has a very strong lashon. The Aruch HaShulchan says, "Umiyomai loy ro'isi." I never ever saw that they should do such a thing. On the other hand, he writes, you have two chasanim, you have two bali bris. Okay, somebody's going to get an aliyah, somebody could get hagba, somebody could get galila. Hagba is certainly nothing to sneeze at, right? We saw the gewaltige schus of Hagba, the schus of showing the tzibbur the Sefer Torah. So give one of them Hagba if you have two. Never forget, I was once in the Aguda in Edison, New Jersey, and Edison has in it the Robert Wood Johnson Hospital, a hospital that's very popular with women from Lakewood. So very, very often, Baruch Hashem, there are Lakewood babies being born in Robert Wood Johnson, and very often fathers are coming from Robert Wood Johnson to the Aguda to name their babies. So we had one, I don't know if it was a Monday or a Thursday, but we had one where we named 4 babies. There were 3 Yisraelim, each one had just had baby girls. The one who had Kayin had one baby, it was Yisrael but become Kayin. The one who had the first Aliyah had 1 baby girl. The one who had the second Aliyah had 1 baby girl. And the third Ayla had twin baby girls. So we named 4 girls in Shul that morning. Very memorable experience. Okay. Now let's go weiter to Sif Beis, which is a very interesting Sif, 3 lines off the bottom in the Shulchan Aruch. Says the Mechaber, Mokaim shemafsikin b'Shabbos b'Shachris. the point at which you stop the laning on Shabbos morning, aka the end of that week's parsha, right? This week is going to be Parshas Bamidbar, so we're going to lane Shabbos morning Parshas. Well, let's do it the other way. This past Shabbos, yesterday, I'm sorry, I don't even know what I'm saying. Yesterday we laned Parshas Bamidbar. So we were mafsik the kriah. We ended off the kriah at the end of Parshas Bamidbar. So that's the mokim shemafsikin b'Shabbos b'Shachris. The point at which you end the kriah, the previous Shabbos, sham kairin b'mincha. That's where you start the laning. Shabbos afternoon by mincha, ubisheni ubechamishi, and on Monday and on Thursday ubishabbos haba, and the next Shabbos. So this past Shabbos we lay in Parshas Bamidbar. Shabbos afternoon we picked up with Parshas Nasai. Monday we're gonna lay in Parshas Nasai. Thursday is gonna be Erev Shavuos. Thursday we're gonna lay in Parshas Nasai. Shabbos afternoon, Shabbos is Shavuos, so it's not nogea. But normally we would lay in Parshas Nasai. Okay, no chiddush over here so far. Says the Mishnah Berurah Katan Daled, b'mincha b'sheni v'chamishi. Says the Mishnah Berurah, what if you goof? V'im to v'karu la'shloisha kruim b'parsha rishona shal seder shavua ha'avar oy shal shavua ha'ba la'akash shvuah. What if the Balkare goofs? Now, I know I lane, by my minyan, I lane during the week. Very often what happens is, I come to take out the Sefer Torah. The minyan I daven in is in the yeshiva's library. So Monday morning I come, I open up the Sefer Torah, and it's holding where it was holding last week. So when I open up the Sefer Torah tomorrow, it's going to be holding at the beginning of Parshas Bamidbar. Why? Because that's where we laned on Thursday, and they don't use that Sefer Torah on Shabbos. So Monday morning, I'm going to have to roll to Parshas Nasai when I take the Sefer Torah out. What if I'm half asleep? And when I get up to lane, I go and I show the Kayin Bamidbar, and I lane Bamidbar. And the tzibbur is also half asleep, and nobody realizes it until after the Krias HaTorah. So what happens if you lane the wrong Parsha? You lane last week's Parsha or the next week's Parsha. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Imu ma'akiv b'di'evet or loi, when it comes to the question of whether or not this is ma'akiv b'di'evet, ayin b'piskei tshuva, he says, take a look at the piskei tshuva, shehevi deis ha'achronim bazeh, who brings different opinions from the achronim when it comes to this question. Now, what is the question? Well, the question is very simple. We learned in the Hakdama of the Mishnah Berurah from the Rambam, the whole reason we have this takana for Krias HaTorah on Monday and on Thursday and on Shabbos afternoon is A, we have Monday and Thursday so that people shouldn't go, and Shabbos, people shouldn't go 3 days without Krias HaTorah. Shabbos afternoon is also a reason because of Yoshvei Kronos. We don't want them just wasting their time Shabbos afternoon. But if that's the reason for the takana, what difference does it make what we lane? And not only if we lane last week's parsha or next week's parsha, what if, the Sefer Torah is holding by Rosh Chodesh, and we lane Rosh Chodesh's kriah on a regular Monday or Thursday? Bottom line is, we were Mekayim listening to kriah from the Sefer Torah, so l'chara we were Mekayim Moshe Rabbeinu's takana. So there are those that say that b'di'evet yaitza. Then there are those that say no. Moshe Rabbeinu made the takana for that reason, but he made the takana with a matbeya. He made it with a format, and the format is, especially after Takanas Ezra, the format is that week's parsha. If you didn't lane that week's parsha, it's as if you didn't lane. Those are the two sides of the question. Okay, now we go to a very interesting Ramah over here, and this is a Ramah that probably a lot of people learned over the years and felt that it wasn't very nogea, and then it became very nogea. Let's take a look here at the Ramah. Hagah. Im bitlu Shabbos achas krias haparsha b'tzibbur. Let's say 1 week there was no laning. Nobody laned. The tzibbur me'ezet tam sheyeh, there was no minyan. Well, whether or not there was no minyan, believe it or not, that's going to get involved in brisket Torah. Let's say there was a minyan, but there was no Sefer Torah. So no laning. Nobody laned. Or nobody was able to get to shul. No laning. So in bitlu Shabbos achas krias haparsha b'tzibbur, if 1 week there was no Krias HaTorah, l'Shabbos haba, on the next week Kairin oisa parsha im parsha shayacha la oisa Shabbos. The next week, you should lane the parsha that you missed together with the parsha of that Shabbos. And he brings this down from the Arzaruah, and he says, V'ayin l'kaban siman reish pei beis. So, the Ramah just opened up a Pandora's box. The Ramah just introduced us to a concept that you could have a tashlumin, sort of, on Krias HaTorah. You missed Krias HaTorah on one Shabbos. It doesn't say you missed. The tzibbur missed Krias HaTorah on one Shabbos. The next Shabbos you could make up the Krias HaTzibbur, the Krias HaTorah. You lane the parsha that you missed, you lane last week's parsha, together with this week's parsha. And by doing so, you make up for your missed Krias HaTorah. Okay, let's take a look here at the Mishnah Berurah. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Ois cotton hay. And you can see how the rest of the Mishnah Berurah on this page and a few lines on the next page all has to do with this halacha. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Ois cotton hay, im bitlu. If there was no Krias HaTorah on one Shabbos. Now, why wasn't there a Krias HaTorah? Says the Mishnah Berurah, machmas kitata v'chadoyma. The reason there was no Krias HaTorah is machmas kitata. Machmas kitata, the word kitata means a tumult. What happened? Maybe chas v'chalila was a pogrom. Maybe they came and they shut down the shul. So machmas kitata, there was no Krias HaTorah. Okay, let's pause a second. Let's take a look at the Bir Halacha, Dibra Maschel im Bitlu. Says the Chavetz Chaim, Ayin Mishnah Berurah, take a look at the Mishnah Berurah, V'ayin Ba'ateres Zekanim, and take a look at the Ateres Zekanim, the Mistapek, where they have a suffix, Im Dafka B'shoigeg, or Yafilu B'mezid Nami Tzarech La'ashlim. The Mishnah Berurah says that the reason there was no Krias HaTorah is Machmas Kitata. That's a shoigeg. The goyim came, they shut down the shul. Maybe there was a pandemic. Maybe there was COVID. And the government sent down police officers with big guns to stand by the door and forcibly shut the shul and tell you that you cannot have a gathering. Okay, so that's machmas ktata. The shul was shut down, and now there's no Krias HaTorah. But how about if it was b'mezid? How about if people decided, you know what? Davening's taking too long this week, we're not going to have Krias HaTorah. Or b'prima gadim, or b'shulchan atzei shitim, kasvu, the prima gadim, the shulchan atzei shitim, they write, the bestimas hapaiskim, that from the fact that you don't find that the paiskim differentiate, we don't see any word over here about shoigig, about mezid. Now let's compare this to another halacha. Let's say the halacha of a tashlumin when it comes to a missed davening. Let's say you missed mincha. So it depends. If it was b'shoigig, you somehow forgot, you were involved in something you forgot, you daven two Shemona Esreis by Ma'ariv. The first one is for Ma'ariv, the second one is for mincha. There's a din tashlumin. But what if chas v'chalila somebody b'mezid skipped mincha? I'm busy. I don't want to daven now. He b'mezid skipped mincha. Then there's no din tashlumin. So they're misupik over here. What's the din by this tashlumin for Krias HaTorah? So, again, the Pri Begadim, the Shulchan Atzei Shitim, they say, you don't find that over here by Krias HaTorah, the place can differentiate. So from the fact that they don't differentiate, mashma dafilu b'mezid nami mashlimin. It sounds like even if the tzibbur chas v'chalila b'mezid b'shat nefesh, they decided that to skip a Krias HaTorah, there's still an inyan of tashlumin. Achein, however, mi bir agra, from the words of the bir agra, did nasiv taima the high dino midin tefillah. The Gra actually says that the rationale for a tashlumin by Krias HaTorah is based on the halacha that you could have a tashlumin for a missed davening, for a missed Shemona Esrei. So then the kaimelon tavala yispal is tefillah mashma loisab tefillah smucha. The Gra says that's where we get this idea from. The same way, if you were ta'ah, if you made a mistake and you skipped a tefillah, you could be mashlim the tefillah. So too, if you were tough, you made a mistake and you skipped the Krias HaTorah, or something else prevented you from doing Krias HaTorah, you could make a tashlumin. But that's mashma l'cher d'dafka b'shoigig. But that din is only b'shoigig. K'may hasam she'en lo tashlumin b'mezid. Just like by davening, there is no tashlumin if you skip a davening b'mezid. V'chamavur b'simen kov ches v'ayin sham. So, again, in Mishnah Berurah Ois Katan Hey, coming off the Ramah, the Mishnah Berurah is implying over here that the only time we have this halacha that you can make up a tashlumin for a missed laning is if the missed laning was machmas kitata v'chadoima. It was something that it's like an onus that you were prevented from doing Krias HaTorah. But from the Gra, if you skipped b'mezid, there's no tashlumin. Now let's go weiter in the Mishnah Berurah's Katan Hey. Umayri shaloi karu kalayim. And what we're speaking about over here is that you are unable to do Krias HaTorah for the entire day on Shabbos. Avalim bitlu rak b'shachris hakriah. But if you skipped Krias HaTorah by shachris, ubemincha kvar motzu menucha, and now when it comes time for mincha Shabbos afternoon, the goyim cleared out, and now you're able to lane. So then, im yesh panai likreis kol hasidra, if there's enough time before shkia to lane the whole parsha, yikru b'mincha kol hasidra. So take out the Sefer Torah and lane now. Remember, we said laning this man is all day. So you weren't able to lane at the 9 o'clock minyan this morning. Now it's 4 o'clock, shkia is 6. No problem, take out a Sefer Torah, lane now. V'yikru shiva gavri, a regular laning with 7 aliyahs. Ki kol yom Shabbos huzman kriah. Because all day long on Shabbos you could do the kriah. And then you'll put away the Sefer Torah, say Ashrei V'Olotzion, and then you'll lane 3 aliyahs the next week's parsha for a Shabbos afternoon laning. Avalim gam b'mincha lo yaya menucha, but if you were unable to lay by mincha either, lo yikru b'sheni oy b'chamishi kol hasedra mishabbos ha'avar. Don't think you can make this tashlumin. Why am I waiting for next Shabbos to do the tashlumin? Why don't I do the tashlumin on Monday? Monday morning, I'll take, like let's say a tzibbur missed Parshas Bamidbar yesterday. So Monday morning, we're going to take out a Sefer Torah, we're going to lay Nasai. So why don't we take out the Sefer Monday morning, laying the whole Parshas Bamidbar to make up Bamidbar, and then lay Nasai to take care of Monday? No, that you can't do. Ki b'chol yesh bittul malacha la'am. Because now you're coming up against bittul malacha. Now you're making davening too long. So you can't do it on Monday and Thursday. Ela yikru rak ha-parsha min ha-seder shel Shabbos haba, v'lo min Shabbos ha'avar. So the tashlumin has to be done on the next Shabbos. Now, ois katan vav. The Ramah said that this halacha applies when. We have to be very careful in the words of the Ramah. The Ramah said, in bitlu Shabbos achas, one Shabbos. So we already saw that when the Ramah says im bitlu, going with the gra, it means that it was b'shoigig, or ba'onis, not b'mezid. Now, the Ramah says Shabbos achas. Seems that you could only make a tashlumin for one Shabbos. Says the Mishnah Berurah's Katan Vav, v'im bitlu kama Shabbosos. And again, this is why I say that this halacha became very nogea. COVID, right? You had a lot of shuls that were shut down not for 1 week, not for 2 weeks. You had shuls and whole towns where they didn't have Krias HaTorah for several weeks. They didn't have Krias HaTorah. So what happens if the shuls that were shut down for 4, 5, 6, 7 weeks? You have a whole tzibbur who didn't have Krias HaTorah for 7 weeks in a row. V'im bitlu kama Shabbosos. Now it comes up against the machlokes achronim. Yesh omrim, there are those that say, and this is a famous Maram Mintz, Yesh omrim de'ein likreis b'Shabbos haba, kiyem hasidra ha'achrona ha'smucha luzu. You only get tashlumin for 1 week. So if you missed Bereshis, Noach, Lech Lecha, Vayera, Chayesara, if you missed 5 parshas, and now suddenly you're up to Toldos, and now you're allowed to lane, you could only make up for Chayesara. You could do Chayesara and Toldos. That you could make up. But you can't make up Bereshis, Noach, Lech Lecha, Vayera, that you can't make up. Which, by the way, is again similar to the halach of Shemona Esrei. If you missed Shachris and Mincha, you could daven 2 Shemona Esreis by Ma'ariv to make up Mincha. But you can't daven 3 Shemona Esreis and make up Shachris. You only get to make up the tefillah right before the one that you're doing now. So too, the Maram Min says when it comes to missed Krias HaTorah, you could make up for the Shabbos right before the Shabbos now. So if now it's Bamidbar and you missed Bahar B'chukaisai, you could do Bahar B'chukaisai. Well, we're going to get to that. Let me moderate that. If it wasn't bahar b'chukaisai mechubarin, if it was just b'chukaisai, and now it's b'midbar, and you missed b'chukaisai, you could do b'chukaisai and b'midbar, but you can't do bahar b'chukaisai and b'midbar. That you can't do. Bahar is ready 2 weeks ago. For that, there's no tashlumin, says the Maram Mintz. As far as the shailah of mechubarin, we're going to get to that momentarily. V'yesh oimrim, and then there's the El Yerabah that says that tzarich lahashla b'tzibur kol astorei shebitlu. The El Yerabah says no. You make up all the ones that you missed. Now, says the Mishnah Berurah, and we alluded to this already in the Bir Halacha. Only Bir Agra mashma, from the Bir Agra it is implied to Svirle Kadea Harishina that he holds like the Maram Mintz. Why? Because again, the Bir Halacha is comparing it to the Tashlumin for Tefillah. And that's what we see by the Tashlumin for Tefillah. You only get to make a Tashlumin for the Tefillah right before the one when you're davening. You missed the Mincha and now you're davening Ma'ariv, you can make Tashlumin for Mincha. But you can't make Tashlumin for Shachris by Ma'ariv. That you can't do. So too, by Krias HaTorah, you can make Tashlumin for the one right before. But for two before, you can't make Tashlumin. Interestingly enough, I can tell you that by COVID over here, where back then, Reb Ruven, my Rebbe, Reb Ruven Feinstein Shlita, was davening then every single Shabbos. He davened in the basement of his house, unable to walk up the steps in the yeshiva. His minyan was closed for several weeks in a row during COVID. When his minyan reopened, he brought in a Balkara to lane all of the parshas that he missed. So they laned, it was like 6 parshas. They laned 6 parshas he wanted to make up for all the parshas that he missed. Okay, Ois Cotton Zayin. Krias HaParsha. Now, V'im hayu shtei parshiyos bechubarin ba'oisei Shabbos shebitlu. We just brought this up. Let's say the Shabbos that they missed was Bahar b'chukaisai, and it was bechubarin, right? They were supposed to lane both parshas Bahar b'chukaisai. They missed it. Now it's Bamidbar. Could you lane Bahar b'chukaisai and Bamidbar? Says the Mishnah Berurah, this goes right back to the Machlokes, the Maram Mintz and the El Yerabah. Das Haram Mintz dein mashlimun oisam klal. Maram Mintz says no tashlumin, not for bechukaisai, not for Bahar. You'll only lane Bamidbar. Why? The loy matzinu la'olam shekarin shalosh sedarais b'Shabbos achas. Because the Maram Mintz says there's no such thing as laning more than 2 parshas on the Shabbos. If it was bechukaisai alone and you missed it, and now it's Shabbos by Midbar, you can lane bechukaisai in my Midbar. But the Shabbos you missed was Bahar bechukaisai, so now if you want to make a tashlubin, you have to lane 3 parshas? No such thing. We never lane more than 2 parshas on Shabbos. So maybe just lane bechukaisai, at least make up bechukaisai. Says the Maram Mintz, no. V'likreis pasha akas be'enami le'amina. We're not going to tell you to just lay b'chukaisai. They ain't takon al chatzoin. Because what did you accomplish? You're going to accomplish that you're going to make up half of last week's. Half is nothing. Making up half the Krias HaTorah is not making up the Krias HaTorah. V'hu adin and b'Shabbos zuha yushtei parshas b'chubaros. Or, he says, another case. We'll give you a case like this. Let's say it's Truma and Tetzaveh together. You're in shul by Truma and Tetzaveh, and last week they missed Mishpatim. Last week there was no laning. So can I do Mishpatim, Truma, Tetzaveh? No. The Maram Mintz says, no, you can't. Why? Because again, you're laning more than 2 parshas. So you just do Truma, Tetzaveh, Mishpatim is lost. You never lane more than 2 parshas, says the Maram Mintz. Nami ein mashlim ben parasha b'Shabbos sha'avar b'tamanal. B'hagos minhagim. However, in the Hagos minhagim, chelik al kol zeh v'chein hiskim El Yerabah. The Hagos minhagim, and this is the way the El Yerabah learns. He argues. He says the lo'olam tzarich lahashla masha bitl mishabbos avar. You have to make up whatever you missed the previous week. If what you missed the previous week was a double parsha, so then you're going to make up a double parsha. V'chein noita das sefer magin giborim. Yesh Oimrim, now here's another interesting scenario. Says the Chavetz Chaim, Yesh Oimrim, there are those that say, Dim bitlu parshas vayechi. Let's say you're in shul now, it's Parshas Shemos, and the shul missed laning Parshas vayechi the week before. And now it's Parshas Shemos. There are those that say, Ein l'kroisai in Parshas Shemos. You can't lane Vayechi and Shmos together. Why? Because whenever you lane two parshas, and you'll notice this, this is true whenever we have two parshas mechubarin. Whenever you lane two parshas, you're always going to have one aliyah, misayv sidra rishayna, l'tchila sidra shniya, kedei sheyu mechubarin. There's always one aliyah that is comprised of the end of the first parsha and the beginning of the second parsha. We never end the aliyah at the end of the first parsha. Why? Because we're connecting the two parshas to make them one. How do we do that? By having one aliyah that joins the two parshas. Now, if you missed Parshas Vayechi and you're going to try to make up for Parshas Vayechi by Parshas Shmos, you're going to have one oila who's going to, his aliyah is going to be comprised of the end of Shmos and the beginning of the end of Vayechi and the beginning of Shmos. Says the Chavetz Chaim, you can't do that because there's a break, and indeed in the Sefer Torah there's a whole bunch of lines that are skipped between one Seder and the other Seder, between one Chumash and the next Chumash. You can't have one aliyah that goes from one Chumash to the next. V'zeh ein nachad la'asoisoi b'shnei svarim. V'hu adin b'pekudei vayikra, same halacha would be true by Pekudei, the last parsha of Sefer Shmos, and Vayikra, the first parsha of Sefer Vayikra. V'chadoima. V'yesh cholkin, however, there are those who disagree with this. With Sfira Lahu, they hold the la'olam mashlimin, that you would make up Parshas Vayechi or Parshas Pekudei, whatever the case is. The Shulchan Aruch Shitim, the nogea kain ein moichin b'yadai. The Shulchan Aruch Shitim says if a tzibbur does that, you can't protest. Kasa b'sefer Shari Ephraim in bitlo kriah b'beis hakneses achas. Let's say, like now, which is very common, you have a town that has a whole bunch of shuls. One shul missed the laning on one Shabbos. The roiv tzibbur mibeis hakneses zeh, but most of the tzibbur from the shul that missed the laning, shamu Krias HaTorah b'beis hakneses acheres. So you have you have there's 100 people that daven in the Agudah, and me'ezeh tam sheyiyah, they weren't able to lane one Shabbos in the Agudah. The Sefer Torah was puzzled, and there's no Erev in town. They couldn't bring in another Sefer Torah. So in the Agudah on Shabbos Parshas Bamidbar, they were not able to lane. There was no Krias HaTorah on Parshas Bamidbar that year in the Agudah. But from the 100 people who davened in the Agudah, 75 of them went down the block to the Young Israel, and they heard the Krias HaTorah in the Young Israel. 25 of the members of the Agudah didn't go. So now the Agudah didn't have laning Parshas Bamidbar, but 75 of their members heard laning in the Young Israel. 25 of them did not. Now it's next week Parshas Nosai, and the 25 members of the Agudah who didn't hear Parshas Bamidbar want to make it up. What do? Says the Mishnah Berurah, Ein tzarech lahashlim. Sorry, Charlie, the Agudah is not going to lane a tashlumin for Parshas Bamidbar. Why? Because Roiv of the Tzibur did not miss the kriah. They had the kriah. They were the smart ones. They went down the block to the Young Israel and they heard the kriah. Avalim Roiv Tzibur lo shamu klal. But if you flip the numbers, if 25 people from the Agudah went to the Young Israel and heard the kriah, and 75 didn't, then afal pi sheyesham shtei bati knesiyos, afal pi sheyesham bati knesiyos acheres shekaru sham kadin, then even though most of the shuls in town all had Krias HaTorah, it's only this Agudah didn't have Krias HaTorah. Mikomakam oisen shelo shamu akriah v'hem roiv hatzibur shel beis hakneses seh tzricha lahashlam akriah. Since the majority of the people in this shul, the majority of the people in the Agudah over here missed Krias HaTorah, this tzibur missed Krias HaTorah, and they can make it up the following week. Ois katan ches karen ois a parsha. They're going to lane the parsha that they missed. They have to do it in order. You lane in order. So if you missed Bamidbar and now Shabbos Parshas Nosai, you're going to lane Bamidbar and Nosai, don't think that it's like Tashlumin by davening. Tashlumin by davening, if you missed Mincha, you're going to daven two Shemona Esreis by Ma'ariv. The first one is Ma'ariv, the second one is Mincha. We always do the Tefillah Bizmana first. we always do the Shemona Esrei that's for that Zman. So you do the Ma'ariv one first, then you do the Mincha. Not so by Krias HaTorah. By Krias HaTorah, you're holding on Shabbos Parshas Nosai, and you'll have to lane Bamidbar and Nosai. You don't lane Nosai and then go back to Bamidbar. You lane in an order. You stop Bamidbar and you go straight through to Nosai. Mitchila shel Shabbos ha'avar v'achakach shel Shabbos zu. V'atam, and the reason for this, kasav sham ki mimais Moshe Rabbeinu alav shalom niskan likreis HaTorah b'parshi Yisrael u'la'ashlima k'dei la'ashlima la'am mitzvahs v'chukim. This was the takana of Moshe Rabbeinu to lane every Shabbos and to lane in the road, to lane in the order of the Torah Kedosha. Okay, we're going to stop over here. Thank you so much for joining me for Limud HaTorah. Stuff of Limud HaTorah should be making against Kriah Yisrael. The Ron Shem should say Yeshua's Refuas, Panasa, Cheduchim, to all those in need. And we should be Zoichet to see the Bias Gal Tzedek, B'mehera v'yameinu. Amen. Be well.